Coming up on Network Africa. Former South African President Jacob Zuma reverses his earlier decision to pull out of a corruption inquiry in which he says he was being unfairly questioned. The World Health Organization withdraws a report that claims an Ebola patient may have entered Rwanda. Plus, talks aimed at finalizing details of the transition to democracy in Sudan have been postponed. Hello and a warm welcome to the program. I'm Teniola Kimwale. We begin today in South Africa, where former South African President Jacob Zuma has agreed to give further testimony to a corruption inquiry, withdrawing an earlier threat to pull out. Earlier on Friday, his lawyer said that Mr. Zuma would take no further part in the proceedings, but the judge overseeing the inquiry after said that former president had agreed to provide it with written statements. The inquiry is investigating allegations that Jacob Zuma oversaw a web of corruption while in office.
Abrupt stop to former President Zuma's testimony because of concerns his legal team raised about the line of questioning at the commission. Everyone thought everyone was now on the same page this Friday.
We've come to tell you, Chair, that because of this and the reservations we've raised and our experience in this room, my client has instructed me that he will take no further part in these proceedings. He respected you, he still does, he respects this commission, but the commission does not seem to know its ground rules.
Rule 3.2 is clearly designed to allow and oblige the evidence leaders to comply with their investigative and inquisitorial mandate. We are not here to prove a case. What we are here to do is to investigate in an inquisitorial fashion and to ask questions in relation to topics of which the former president has been made aware, to ask questions which will assist you at the end of the day to determine what is true and what is not true.
The Commission Chair, Justice Raymond Zondo, was not pleased at the turn of events and invited both sides to his chamber for some further discussions. At the end of this, some concessions were granted the former president.
The agreement is that counsel, certainly the lead counsel, but counsel for the former president will meet within before the end of the next 2 weeks with a view to the Commission's legal team making available to the former president's counsel a document that indicates exactly which areas in the various affidavits of witnesses they would like the former president to give information about.
I appreciate that you were able to meet the two teams and found the way forward.
While Mr. Zuma is expected at a much later date at the Commission, sitting continues next week with testimonies on the controversial Estina Dairy Farm project in the Free State province, where most of the hundreds of millions of rands allocated for the benefit of the people was allegedly diverted to associates of the Guptas. One of the whistleblowers was also found murdered. From Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Africa's anti-corruption watchdog says that President Cyril Ramaphosa had deliberately misled Parliament about a 500,000 rand donation received for his campaign to lead the African National Congress. Public Protector Busisiwe Makwibane, who investigates allegations of wrongdoing by state officials, told reporters that Mr. Ramaphosa had violated the Constitution and breached the Executive Code of Ethics in his reply to Parliament in November. Mr. Ramaphosa insists he knew nothing about the donation at the time. Let's get more on this story from our South Africa Bureau Chief, Betty Devia. Betty, thank you for joining us on Network Africa. First, let's start with the Public Protector's announcement that the President deliberately misled Parliament over a donation his election campaign received. How is the government and ordinary South Africans reacting to this?
Well, generally, the people on the streets, they're quite tired of hearing about the huge sums of money that the political elite are throwing around and making to disappear. So reactions vary. Regular people are tired. The politicians, the opposition parties are calling for all sorts of things, including an ad hoc committee to investigate, calling for sanctions against the president. But the president has also reacted to the findings, saying that the findings are, they're unfortunate and deficient both factually and in law. He had released a statement through his spokesperson saying that he responded adequately to some of the issues that the public protector had raised, that evidently she may not have looked or considered some of the answers that he gave before giving her findings, but that then he will study further and make public his own response to her, which he believes that she may not have considered in giving her findings, and then consider what next to do, whether to take the outcome for review, because he has a right to do so. Anyone who is indicted anyhow in the findings of the public protector has a right to take it for review.
Yeah, funny enough, there are some speculations that the public protector has become a partisan figure and is working for some elites in the governing ANC who are looking to seize power. How true is this, Betty?
Well, this has been going round. It's not easy being the public protector in a country like South Africa with a very vibrant democracy, freedom of speech, and a lot of freedoms. Her predecessor went through that before she became the favorite, where she was even called a spy for some international security or intelligence organizations. So we've heard a lot of that. That is going round. Probably the timing of the release of some of our reports, especially this one, may not have helped, with regard to fueling that perception. But seizing power, the public protector leads what they call a Chapter 9 institution, which has been established. There are quite a number of them in this country to help support the democracy in the country. So many people are changing their views depending on the report that is released. So it's hard to accept, oh, this is really true or it's not true. But this particular finding that was published comes not too long after the president one release for against the Minister for Public Enterprises, Pravin Gordhan, whom the president supports and is also supporting in court because he's taking his own report to court. And the president has filed papers supporting that report. Now, her releasing this report against the president, whether rightly or wrongly, a lot of people are taking it that she's become partisan. But to her, and she keeps maintaining that she is doing her job, and that she'll keep doing that without fear or favor. But that's just what you find in democracy.
Yeah, and Betty, just briefly, let's talk about former President Jacob Zuma now, who threatened to withdraw from a separate corruption inquiry. He later reversed his course on this. Do we know why he did this, why he turned around?
Some concessions were granted. I guess there's a lot of respect going around, respect for the chair of that's Justice Raymond Zondo, from the president, the former president, and the other way around, from the Justice Zondo to the president. Initially, the rules agreed in that inquiry is that no one gets the questions ahead of time to prepare. You just know there have been allegations against you, you come there and you answer. And some documents had already been given regarding some of the testimonies that were made, and some of which had allegations against him as the former president. So some of the concessions, I guess it's probably just respect, him agreeing to come there in the first place. And after that meeting, because the issues of cross-examination and him being allegedly ambushed by the evidence leader started all the way back. And on Wednesday, the proceedings had to stop. Thursday, there was no sitting for them to talk more about it. So now, after the discussions, the chair of the inquiry now agreed that the council meet, talk about it some more, and probably make available some of the areas they will want him to answer. It's concession granted him. Some people are not happy about, some people didn't expect, some are saying they're bowing to the former president. But I guess democracy at work.
All right, then, Betty, thank you so much for reporting and joining us on Network Africa. Have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Moving on, in Morocco, a court has condemned 3 suspected jihadists to death for the murder of 2 Scandinavian women beheaded while on a hiking trip in the country. Suspected ringleader Zuma Withdraws and 2 others received the maximum penalty over the deaths. Louisa Jesperson and Maureen Ulen's bodies were found on December 17 in a tent in an area near Mount Chubkal, Morocco's highest peak. The women were on a Christmas camping trip and were studying to become tour guides. The World Health Organization has withdrawn a report that says an Ebola patient may have entered Rwanda, suggesting the deadly virus could spread to that country for the first time. The report and others written by Uganda's health ministry and published as daily updates by the WHO's Africa office detailed the case of a Congolese fishmonger who died of Ebola after going to Uganda and vomiting 4 times. Thursday's report said the woman was suspected of going to the Congolese city of Goma and then into neighboring Rwanda while suffering from Ebola, which is highly contagious. The report said health workers were struggling to track down people with whom she may have had contact with in the market, but many of them refused to cooperate, believing she had died from witchcraft or an abortion. The report, which was unusually detailed and candid about investigations of ongoing cases, were published without the knowledge of WHO headquarters in Geneva, which said late on Thursday that several of the reports had been removed. The website where they were posted has also been disabled. Following the World Health Organization's recent declaration of Ebola as a global emergency, a medical expert is appealing for an urgent international effort to contain the deadly virus, as the current situation is quite serious. Ted Alimayu, founder and president of U.S. Doctors for Africa, says that other countries, along with global organizations, can offer help and support to countries in need. He also made comparisons with the 2014 Ebola outbreak in West Africa, during which time all countries were at loss as the virus was new to them. At that time, the global community was very terrified and didn't want this particular case to come into their own countries.
The situation, once again, is serious, okay? It's serious enough that the World Health Organization has declared as a global emergency so that, not only the African countries can take the proper action and precautions to protect their citizens and people who otherwise be vulnerable for this deadly virus, but also the global community to once again come together and assist these particular countries with all the technical and financial and healthcare support that they desperately need. And what happened last time, 2014 and 15, during that time, the world was not ready for this. I mean, everybody was quite defensive, including countries within the African continent. But luckily, I think with the media's incredible awareness campaign and the African Union getting involved and the presidents of the African nations and the global community rallying behind this particular devastating, really, disease, that they were able to contain it. Now, we need the same kind of mobilization of forces around the world before this thing gets out of control.
Still to come on the program, our Africa Tech segment takes a look at the controversies surrounding the use of the viral Face app. That's in a moment. Please stay with us.